Hello and welcome to Starling Watch 2023. It is the end of January, in the last couple of weeks of the Starling murmurations at Brighton Pier. Now, a murmuration is a large group of starlings that act together. They can form clouds that swoop and swish across the sky, and when they change directions they go sometimes from being really difficult to spot right the way through to just being incredibly impressive darkness across the sky. That's what I'm hoping to capture tonight. This is the third time that I have been here, and I've arrived just over half an hour before sundown. And the reason I've done that is because I want to make sure that I'm in position. Today I'm going to go to the end of this pier. The reason I'm doing that is because I would like to get the opportunity to be surrounded by those incoming birds, because they go and they roost on the end of that pier. And as they're coming towards me to go to their roosting spot in the night, I'm hoping to capture some scenes where I have them sort of all around me. I know that means that some of them may not be in focus, some of them might have some motion blur in them, but I'm quite excited by that concept. Now, normally if I come here to photograph, I choose to do it first thing in the morning, really quite early if possible, so that I get lovely sunrise colours, but also I would choose to focus on two monuments. One is the old burnt out West Pier, which has kind of become iconic really amongst photographers. In 2003, I believe it was arson, it was burnt out, and it's gradually being more and more dilapidated. But also I would choose to shoot the bandstand. Previously when I've been here, I've actually stood just down here on the beach, and I have been looking out towards the end of the pier and the fun fair at the end of the pier. And when it becomes dusk, the lights come on, the whole thing comes into action, the sun hits the side of that lovely white helter-skelter that's there, and you get some lovely profiles of the birds as they sweep in. Now, it's not exactly known why starlings in particular flock together in these murmurations, but it is thought that it's either for socialization or it is for protection, because quite often on the edges of those clouds of birds you'll see larger birds perhaps trying to take off one or two of those birds for their supper or just to attack them. What we do know is that quite often the murmurations will start in small groups of 50 to 100 birds, and they'll gradually get together to get bigger and bigger flocks. Right, things that you need to know if you're going to shoot starling murmurations. Clearly, if starlings are going to arrive at their roosting site, they need to leave as well. Now, clearly also that's going to happen in the morning, but they don't tend to do those lovely patterns and fly around creating those beautiful shapes that they can do. Secondly, if it's not very good weather or it's too windy, they will tend not to perform, and they will go in low over the water to their roosting sites fairly quickly. So you really need to look for a calm, relaxed day. Thirdly, as I said earlier, you really need to be here about half an hour prior to sunset, and maybe for about an hour afterwards. Now, when you have that, you're going to potentially have to battle with light issues, and that might mean hiring your ISOs, or if you've got a fast lens, perhaps choosing that one as well. Now, Brighton Pier is one of the more famous places on the south coast to host the roosting sites. The biggest one in the country is in the Avalon Marshes in Somerset, and that's supposed to have an enormous number of starling murmurations. Fourthly, there are many sites that you can have a look at on the internet that will give you information on how to shoot starlings. But one of the most useful things for getting up-to-date in information is the website starlingsintheuk.co.uk. And that will give a lot of up-to-date information, because people feed into it and talk about the proper roosting sites, not just where murmurations have been spotted, because they can be very, very transient. When you're shooting murmurations, I would suggest you have the same approach that you would do to landscape photography, in that you're wanting to perhaps set a scene. This might mean that you would use a medium telephoto lens. Now today I've only got one lens with me. I bought my 24-105. Previously when I was on the beach, I thought I'd need to do something like a 100-400. And the reason I thought that was because I thought that I'd have to zoom in and pick out smaller murmurations. The problem is, I've realised that context is actually quite important and it really can make or break a shot. So in this particular setting, I don't need a very long end telephoto. It might be that if you're in another one where you're in marshes, it might be that you do want to have that, but I would suggest that actually having a variety of something like 70-200 might cover all bases. Now I came here at the weekend to park myself halfway up the pier where I currently am, and it didn't work out as I was hoping. What I wanted to do was to capture the old pier from the new pier. That's fine, I had my 70-200 lens, but the problem was it was one of those days where they weren't going to perform. What that meant was that I actually had the wrong lens on, and as I was swinging round to capture them coming in here, I couldn't capture what I wanted. But what I did get was a rather calm shot over the Rampion wind farms. This is actually a combo of two photos taken at 1/500th of a second, and what I was trying to do was to plot the journey of those birds that I took between two shots. Had I had the wherewithal, I'd have probably taken more. I think that could have been quite an interesting concept. So let's talk shutter speed. The closer that the beasties are to you, the faster your shutter speed has to be. Therefore, when I was on the beach, I had a long distance between me on the beach and the beasties on the end of the pier, and what that meant was I could get away with ISO 400, shutter speed of 1/250th of a second. Now the reality is, today I'm probably going to have to go 1/500th to 1,000th of a second because I'm anticipating them coming really quite close to me. I'm going to have to preset my focus to something that's going to be acceptable, and maybe have an F number of something like, I don't know if I can get away with F9, I might have to go down to less than that. I might have to go 7.1. Now what that does have to mean is that I have to be very careful about my ISO. It's going to have to be raised, but not quite as high as I had it at the weekend. I may have gone to ISO 4000. I may have accidentally switched to auto ISO and not noticed. I have a suspicion this is probably as close as I'm going to get up here. Hopefully I can squeeze round there because I know that they're going to come in all around this area. Having reached my destination as to where I was going to shoot the starlings from, I noticed there was some really interesting light. Couldn't resist grabbing this shot. Now I know it's not the prettiest of viewpoints, but on the right third you have the I360. On the left third you've got the old pier, the one that I mentioned was burnt out, and right in the distance you've got the shore and port. The earlier murmurations, or the earlier groups of starlings, come in and do their dance a lot more than the later ones, who will quite often come in just over the water and will then go into roost fairly quickly. So that's why you need to be there a little bit earlier. Tonight, interesting skies. Quite exciting. It's whether or not I can get anything. Yeah, I just want them all over me, just to see if I can get something maybe a little bit artsy-farty with a little bit of longer timing, or maybe frozen. I don't know. See what happens. Knowing me, I'll come away with nothing. Now what transpired was about 30 minutes of really exciting, mesmerising action. Did they come anywhere near me? Did they? Heck. But just to be able to watch this was just a real privilege. And you know what? I didn't even notice the heavy pounding of the dance music that was going on behind me, and the wind noise. That's how good it was. I may be preempting this, but I think that was a cool shoot. Yes!